Welcome to the virtual college exploration program for all Illinois students, sponsored by the Illinois Association for College Admissions Counseling and StrifeScan. Thank you for joining us. A few housekeeping announcements before we get started. You can use the Q&A button on your screen to type your questions to our presenters at any time. Your camera and microphone are off, so the panelists cannot see or hear you. This is just one of many different sessions happening, so be sure to check out the full schedule at IACAC.org. This presentation is being recorded and will be available within about a week at the same website, IACAC.org. I'd now like to turn it over to our presenters.
Thanks so much. Hi everyone, thank you for joining us today. Let me just share my screen with you. Today we are talking about studying in the land down under, Australia. My name's Leanne Allen and I represent Macquarie University, which is in Sydney, Australia, and I'm based in California, representing the university across the US and Canada. Todd?
Good day, everyone. I'm Todd St. Vrain, the North America Manager for the University of Melbourne. Melbourne's in the southern part of Australia, and I'm based in San Francisco.
Hi everyone, my name is Tori Ellenberger and I represent Deakin University, which is also in Melbourne, and I'm currently based in North Carolina.
Awesome. So today we're just going to give you a bit of information on why you should consider going to Australia for your degree, the benefits of it, what academic life is like, and how you apply to universities on the other side of the world. And then we'll just give you a quick introduction to each of our universities so you got a better idea of the different campuses in Australia, and then we'll have a bit of time for Q&A. So we just thought we would start with COVID-19 because that is ruling all of our lives at the moment. Australia has done incredibly well of looking after its people, and sort of the first wave, as you can see here, did start when it did in the rest of the world, and then there was about 6 to 8 weeks where we didn't have really any infection as well. And we have had a second wave, but very happy to report that has sort of ended now, and we have very little community transmission in Australia. Australia's borders are currently closed to non-Australian citizens, so international students who aren't physically in Australia have been requested to start online, but we're certainly hoping that in the next couple of months Australia's borders will open. So for those starting next year, they will be able to join us on campus. Time will tell, however, and we will certainly keep students updated on that process. Over to you, Tori.
Just going to talk through a bit about the benefits of an Australian education and sort of the lay of the land with regard to what are the universities there, how many, where are they located, what's the vibe like. So we can go ahead and click through, Leanne. Thank you. Let's first start with the geography of Australia. So I don't know if you've ever been there, but it's a wonderful country. The size is similar to that of the US. In terms of land mass, but the major difference is the population. So you can see that the population is just around 25 million people. As you can see, it's concentrated around the coast. So 90% of the Australian population lives within 60 miles of the coast, if not closer. And some of the world's most beautiful beaches are there. Another interesting fact about Australia is that 1 in 4 people in Australia are born overseas. So it's quite multicultural and a welcoming place for everyone. A little bit about the universities in Australia. So overall, there are 43 universities, quite different to that here in the US. And each of them has their own sort of personality and really characteristics about them that make them unique. But you'll see that 40 of those universities are public, 2 are international, and only 1 is private. Again, much like the population, the universities are concentrated around the coasts of the country. Go ahead, Leanne. Thank you. Now here's an interesting slide, and one that we really get a lot of questions about. So what is the difference really between getting your university degree in Australia versus in the US? And this really gives us a nice overview. So essentially, one of the major differences is that when you attend university in Australia, typically you are prepared. You know what you're going to study. You already have your degree or your major decided, so that you're not going in as an undeclared or undecided student. That doesn't mean that you cannot switch, but we expect that you would know essentially what you would be studying when you come in, and we don't have those general sort of gen eds that are required here in the US. You can switch majors, and like I said, but bear in mind that that might add a little bit of time to your overall course duration. And that's another important point. So the degrees in the US typically are 4 years for undergrad, and in Australia, they're only 3. And that again is due to not needing those additional gen eds and really focusing on the learning outcomes for your degree. Another major difference is that here in the States, you would have a number of assignments and I guess touch points along the way throughout the semester where you would be your grades would be sort of assessed, whereas in Australia it's more exam heavy. So you would have one big exam, possibly 2, and maybe a handful of other assignments. Application. So applying to Australian University is direct to the university that you want to apply for, to the program or course that you would like to study. Applications are on a rolling basis and are typically free. Whereas in the US, it's a very different process, as you would know. Again, in Australia, admissions are very transparent. So based on standardized tests and GPA, and very much focused on the academic sort of things. So we wouldn't necessarily be requiring any personal statement or letters of reference. Important to know that each university would have a different stance on testing right now with regard to the COVID policies. So when you're applying, be sure that you do touch base with everyone to know what their policies are. And then another great feature of Australian universities is that you can fast track undergrad programs like medicine, vet, and law, and typically get through those much quicker than you would in the US, where often graduate school is required. And again, with financial aid, it's merit-based, so there are scholarships available, and a lot of the Australian universities do accept the US financial aid. Over to Todd.
Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit more about academic and student life. So I think you recognize that we are all large universities. So University of Melbourne has over 50,000 full-time students. So I think a small university in Australia would be like 25,000 students. So you have to be prepared that you might have some really large lectures. We do have a feature that all of the subjects are going to be supplemented with a weekly tutorial, which would be like a small group discussion or lab. So even though the overall size of the university is really large, you're still going to have some more interaction about that. We did talk about that you're going to have fewer assessments and that the grading is really rigorous in Australia. All right, let's head to the next slide, please. So how is it a good fit for you? I would think that coming to Australia, obviously you have to have a sense of adventure for coming all the way from Illinois. And also that you're a bit more of a mature, independent learner. Certainly you can reach out to your academics, to your tutors, but it's more responsibility on you in kind of keeping up with the reading schedule that they would have. What I love about Australia when I went as a graduate student was just a little bit more of a laid-back lifestyle, which is great. And yeah, just being really ready to do things differently, and just mind that because of our different academic year, your summer break is actually going to be from like mid-November through late February. All right, next. And like all American universities, you're going to have an orientation, and we do have an orientation specifically for international students. And your accommodation, so if you want to live on campus in the dorms or residence halls, we call those colleges, just to confuse you. And that would come with a meal plan and sometimes their own support learning systems. There's other options as well, like student housing as well. And we're going to have all the clubs and societies and sports that are part of campus life. It's just a bit different that like sports, it's not like going to the big game on a Friday night or a Saturday afternoon as you would expect in the United States, but certainly very vibrant campus communities as well. Okay, and finally, we have a lot of support services for students with different abilities and learning challenges, whether that's needing extra time to take a test or working with specialists to meet your various needs. And it's actually something required by law. So I think that you would find all of the support services that you would be wanting and expecting and that you would have here in the US. Okay. All right, on to now to the cost of the degree.
Great. So this is one thing that we often get asked, and people are usually pretty surprised by the fact that it's quite affordable to attend university overseas. So up here, this chart essentially sort of gives some comparison points. So you've got University of Illinois, Chicago, in-state, University of Wisconsin-Madison, out-of-state, DePaul, and then the average Australian degree. So if you look at the bottom line, of course, you can look in detail at each line item, but what we really like to look at is that bottom line. So the total cost of the degree can often be upwards of $100,000 difference. And again, this is largely due to the fact that the undergraduate degrees are shorter in duration. This also means that you can get out into the workforce faster. So where your academic peers would be in university for an additional year, you'd be out into the workforce getting that first job. So a little bit more about financing. So the annual living expenses, we typically recommend students be prepared with between $13,000 and $18,000 US dollars. And one of the nice things about coming to Australia as a student is that you do have the ability to work 20 hours per week while you're studying. And then when you're not in full-time teaching periods, you can work full-time. I know that number always jumps out at me, but if you look at that minimum wage, it's quite generous there in Australia at around $20 per hour. And again, most of our universities do have merit-based scholarships, so it's really quite an affordable option. But important to know that the scholarships in Australia are not based on need, so that's also a little bit different to the way it works here. Currently, the exchange rate is quite favorable. And another really awesome benefit of studying overseas as a student is the healthcare coverage that you're required to have overseas healthcare insurance, but really you pay a fee once, and it's anywhere between $1,800 upwards, depending on if you're coming just yourself or with dependents. But essentially, it's a really affordable way to have comprehensive health care. So what does that mean? If you get sick, break your arm, need to go to a doctor, that's all covered in that overseas healthcare insurance. So it's really another benefit to you while you're studying.
Okay, so onto the application process, and it is a little different from school to school in the United States. So you certainly will need to go to each of the representatives to sort of find out exactly what it is, and we will go into a little bit of detail as we talk about it today as well. But generally speaking, applications are very much academic based. So we will look at your SAT or ACT scores and your GPA, as well as your IB diploma score if you are doing the IB curriculum. Some schools do require the APs, others don't. Obviously, COVID has changed things a little as well. So some schools have been able to go test optional for 2020 and possibly 2021. But again, you will need to speak directly to each of the universities just to clarify what their policy is. By being merit-based, essentially, we are just looking at your test scores. So unlike the US schools, we don't require essays or recommendation letters either. So it's very much a transparent process. You can look on online at our website and know exactly what you need to achieve to gain entry into the university, which is really helpful. We go by the theory that you're mature enough to decide if this is the right fit for you, as opposed to the US schools that like to make that decision. So it's just a very different mindset. Mostly applications are free as well. Some institutions do charge a little bit. So again, go to each of the individual universities. But I know each of our schools do offer rolling admission. So you can apply at any time really in your senior year. And often you'll get a response to that application within 2 to 3 weeks, which is really helpful as well. The application and the funding is a little different for Australian students. So if you are an Australian passport holder, please get in touch with the university and we'll walk you through those processes because it can be a little different to it as a non-Australian citizen. Now I will pass it over to Tori so you can learn a little bit about Deakin University.
Thanks, Leanne. So like I said, my name is Tori Ellenberger. I work for Deakin University, which is based in Melbourne, Australia. And my contact details are there, so feel free to get in touch. Deakin is a young university and quite innovative and flexible in its approach. It's established in the 1970s, but since then has really climbed up the rankings in terms of world-renowned rankings. So we're a comprehensive teaching and research university, and that means essentially anything you could want to study, we probably have that degree for you, and are again recognized internationally in the world stage with our rankings. So it's top quality teaching and research. Deakin is known as Australia's digital academy. So what does that mean? That means prior to having to transform ourselves into accommodating students' needs digitally, we were doing that before. So we really got comprehensive, bespoke, additional programs and services that are in the online environment that help students with their experience at university. So we really focus on student satisfaction at Deakin and have won the state's highest satisfaction rates from students for the past 10 years. And again, much like Australia, our student population is quite diverse. We have over 16,000 international students, and that's out of a population of around 60,000 students in general. And that's across 5 campuses. There are 4 physical locations, and then we have our online campus as well. So don't let that intimidate you too much. I've had students say, what, 60,000? That's not at one campus, so don't get too concerned. So here are some of the subject rankings where we perform best. We are really well known for exercise and sports science and come in the top 10 regularly in the world rankings. We're also very well known for education, teaching, and nursing. And again, we've got subjects that rank in the top 150, such as communication and media studies and accounting and finance. I've touched on our student satisfaction. Deakin Sync is essentially your home base for everything that you would need to do to navigate your educational experience. So you go there to register for classes, pay your fees, figure out all sorts of things like how do you buy a Deakin hoodie. Everything's there in Deakin Sync. Along with that, we've got a really cool program that we've developed on campus. And I'd say if you have a spare 5 minutes and you're interested, search it up. It's called Deakin Genie. Essentially, it's your personal assistant, much like Siri, but customized to the Deakin environment. That will help you with those things along the way. So you're trying to navigate around campus and you don't know where lecture theater 3.125BA is. Well, you simply could just ask Deakin Genie and she'll say, oh, I'll help you with that, Tori. She'll pull up the map. Then we have a campus scout, which essentially will link you to walking directions to your lecture theater. So really, we've taken sort of what students need to accommodate a successful experience at university and paired it with the traditional experience of teaching and learning and research. Again, these are our areas of study, key areas of study, and you'll see that it's quite comprehensive. At Deakin, we have 3 intake dates. So that means if you're not quite ready to head over in March or July, there's also an intake in November. We call them trimesters. So depending on the course or program you decide to study, you may just be able to come at any point across the year. We do typically require SATs and ACTs, but at the moment we have decided that we will be going test optional. So feel free to get in touch if you have any questions about that. And again, here's our overall comprehensive offerings. We'll head down the road to Todd at University of Melbourne.
Okay, everyone. So yeah, staying in Melbourne. We'll head to the next slide. So Melbourne is a city of about 4 million people. Only 14 hours from the west coast of the United States, and about an hour-and-a-half flight south of Sydney. So Melbourne is a large public research-intensive university. We're actually the 2nd oldest university in Australia, dating back to 1853. We're part of a group of Australian universities that are kind of regarded as kind of like the Ivy Leagues down under. I think that what it means is that in terms of being a research intensive university, we're right next to the biomedical precinct, and that's where people are doing things like bioengineering heat-resistant coral to save the Great Barrier Reef, or immunologists who were the first outside of China to map the coronavirus. And these are actually people that are teaching you in, as a freshman or sophomore. So we are very large, as mentioned, about 50,000 full-time students, and very international, with nearly half of our student body being international students. Most Americans would come for a semester abroad, but we do see during their undergraduate studies, but we do see a growing number of people coming for their full degree. So this is just some images of our campus, and if we can head back to the next slide, we'll take you through a little bit down here. So we have streamlined our degrees into just 8 degrees as a comprehensive university. This could be in agriculture. We do have a veterinary program at the graduate school level, so pre-vet is popular. Arts means liberal arts and humanities. Popular majors include international relations, psychology, criminology, media. We also have an entire range of biomedicine. We call business commerce, as well as design for things like architecture, and a separate campus for the visual and performing arts, and quite a full range in science. So we are a bit different from the other Australian universities in that we do require you to do 25% of your degree outside of your major and your school. And these are called breadth subjects. So it's kind of like gen ed in the United States, not as much. And it's really up to you as to what you want to do. So it does give you the ability to actually not have to declare a major until halfway through your degree, and some flexibility in terms of deciding on a major or even transferring degrees. So your admissions, if you're doing a high school, US high school diploma, as we said, is going to be based on SAT or ACT, your GPA. It's unweighted, but it will vary per degree. And we are one of the few Australian universities that require advanced placement exams to meet our prerequisites. If you don't have the AP exams, you would have to present a university level subject, like a dual credit subject, for review to see if you could meet those requirements. We also take the IB as well, and it is currently under review whether or not it'll be test optional for SAT or ACT. But you actually wouldn't have to present one of those tests until actually the end of your senior year because of our different academic year. So these are just some scenes around campus in the city, and we'll head to the next slide. So if there's anyone who's listening in as a freshman, a sophomore, or junior, we do have a program for high school students that takes place for 1 or 2 weeks in July, the Young Leaders Program. Each week you explore a different topic to kind of find out what it's like to study that, what a career like that be. You're living on campus in one of the colleges, the dorms, about half Australian, half international students. The program was canceled this past year because of COVID, but we're hopeful that it will be returning next year. We do offer scholarships for students from the US and Canada. All right, next slide. And we've just closed applications for the Amazing Spaghetti Machine competition, which is a team-based ability to put your skills to use. So again, anyone, freshman, sophomore, or junior, this is something that you could think about to participate in next year. The applications usually close at the end of September, and the winning team gets scholarships to come on our Young Leaders Program. We're going to have an event on October 28th, a panel of our students called UniMelba Ask an Undergrad. So this is a chance to really hear from the experts of what it's like to study and live in Melbourne. So contact me for more information about that. Okay, I think. And of course, all of this is you're studying in Melbourne, a city 7 times voted the most livable city in the world. It's really a city. We're right near the heart of almost about 15 minutes from downtown. And it's a campus, it's a city known for its food and cafes, live music scene, regarded as the sports capital of Australia because we host things like the Australian Open and the Grand Prix. But yeah, just people in general love sports. and also really easy access to some of the beautiful nature that Australia is so well known for. Our winters are probably like 40s and 50s, which probably for you in like places like Chicago might think that's not really winter, but that is winter. And of course, just remember that's going to be July or August when you're going to have our winter. Okay, that's it for University of Melbourne. So please get in contact. There's two of us here based in California if you have any more questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Todd, and welcome now to Sydney, the most Instagrammable city in the world, which we're pretty proud of. It is a stunning city, as you can see here. Sydney has about 4 million people, and similar to Australia, it's incredibly diverse as well. A lot of US students say the one complaint they have about coming to Sydney is there's just not good Mexican food, whereas I say the one complaint I have here in the US is I just don't have good Southeast Asian food. So one of the fun things about studying abroad is just learning about those geographical sort of things that you can enjoy when overseas. So Macquarie University has about 40,000 students, and of that there are 12,000 international students. So again, going with the trend of very big and very international campus. We're located about 20 minutes from the downtown area of Sydney, so best of both worlds, that big cosmopolitan city experience with incredible beaches, and then you can retreat back to campus, which is a really pretty parklands university, as you can see here. Just as any US student would expect going to school, you would find that on an Australian campus as well. So lots of clubs and associations are available for students to join, and I recommend joining as many as possible when you first arrive, just to try and find what you like, meet as many people, and you'll certainly settle into the community very well. One of the biggest differences is we don't have the NCAA or anything like that in Australia, but we have the Australian University Games, which students say is one of the highlights of their university careers as well. So a lot of really fun opportunities to get involved, especially things like Australian football or cricket, which you're probably not so familiar with, coming from the US as well. So again, most of our degrees are 3 years in duration. You could certainly choose to do a double degree if you wanted to, which is 4 years in duration, and you get 2 pieces of paper at the end of it, essentially. You could also choose to do a double major or a double minor. It's very flexible depending on what kind of program you want, what kind of career you want to do at the end of it. So that's a great thing about the Australian education system. And once you go in, if you say you're doing business and you decide after a couple of months that you really don't like business at all and you want to try something different, that's okay. You can certainly move around in the Australian system, unlike the UK system where it's pretty strict. If you're going into a business degree, you are doing that for 3 years. So if you're not totally set on what you want to do, coming to Australia is a really great option. And as Todd said, it's not that far away. You can actually fly from Chicago to Auckland and then jump across to Sydney or Melbourne that way as well. I think it's about 16, 17 hours from Chicago to Auckland, and a 3 hours onwards to Australia, so not too bad at all. Our most popular programs are our business administration, international business, as well as our media and journalism programs. We specialise in software and telecommunications, engineering as well. Our Macquarie academics actually invented Wi-Fi, so you are welcome. We also have a really great marine science major where you can do your placement on the Great Barrier Reef, which is a really cool opportunity. And we have a flagship 6-year Bachelor of Clinical Science, Doctor of Medicine program as well, which is a pretty phenomenal program. So if you're thinking about doing medicine, it's well worth looking into that degree. You actually spend your 5th year, 3 months of that in India at our partner hospital there. And then in the 6th year, you're able to come back to the United States and do a clinical rotation at Dartmouth College or Washington St. Louis, which is a pretty amazing opportunity. When you are on campus, you can certainly live on campus if you want to, or you could live off campus. It's not guaranteed or compulsory to stay on campus, although I would definitely recommend it, at least for your first year while you're sort of coming to Australia and out of home. Generally speaking, you will have your own bedroom. Australians find it quite unusual that Americans share bedrooms while at college. That's another fun cultural experience you'll get to enjoy. And a lot of the options, you will actually get your own bathroom as well, which is pretty cool. Some options have a full meal plan like you would expect from a US college, others don't. So it just really depends on what kind of lifestyle you want and how much money you want to put towards your accommodation options as well. We will pick you up from the airport when you first arrive in Sydney and take you back to your accommodation. And if your family's coming with you as well, we'll certainly help them out and take them to their accommodation too. We have 24-hour, 7-day-a-week support services on campus that you can sort of go to if you're feeling a bit homesick. You can speak to a professional, or if you've been out and you've lost your wallet and you just need to borrow an emergency $50, they're there for students all the time. As Tori was saying as well, based on your overseas healthcare insurance, you are fully covered from any incidental medical situations, which is great. And we do own and operate our own hospital, so that's right there for you as well. In terms of applications, we look at your SAT or ACT scores normally, but we are test optional at the moment. So we will look at your GPA from your undergraduate degree program. You can apply anytime in your senior year, and we will give you a full offer if you meet our requirements, with condition of successfully finishing high school and maintaining your GPA as well. It's free to apply to the university as well, which is super helpful, and you generally get a response within about 2 weeks. You are able to use your US financial aid, and we do have merit-based scholarships as well. So students average about $10,000 towards their first year of tuition with a higher GPA when they submit an application to us. What's the other thing? The visa process as well coming to Australia is really straightforward as well. And we help you throughout that entire process. So we try and make the process as simple as possible for you when you're coming to the university. And I think that is all from me. Does anyone have any questions?
There haven't been any questions that have come in yet, so please, please post them now if you do. So I've actually heard students will say, I would really love to come to Australia, but I'm really scared of all of these, you know, poisonous, venomous snakes and spiders you have. So Leanne and Tori, how would you respond to a student, you know, having a fear of those, of our wildlife?
Well, I know how Leanne would respond. Go ahead, Leanne.
Well, if you haven't guessed, I am an Australian and I've been in the US for about 5 years, and I have survived the first part of my life in Australia with all those spiders and snakes, and they're not that terrifying. But I generally say to students, I am much more afraid of guns in America than any spider or snake in Australia. And I'm actually amazed at how many scary spiders there are here anyway, and snakes for that matter, so.
That's true. We just had one in our backyard. So yeah, I would say the same. Well, I can't say that I was born and raised in Australia. However, I did live there for many years, and never once was I bitten or struck by any creature.
And that's because no one has died from a spider bite related fatality since 1979. Another fun fact for you. Todd, do you know this one? If you saw one new beach in Australia every day, how many years would it take you to see every beach?
I don't know, 3 years?
Do you know, Tori?
Oh, I should know this. Was it, I thought it was more like, oh, I don't know. I can't remember, Leah.
27 years.
I
so
thought
if
I
you
was
saw one
gonna
new
say
beach every day in Australia, it would take 27 years to see them all.
I was going to say 26, and then I thought, no, that can't be right. But wow, isn't that incredible? The beaches are truly, I mean, some of the most stunning beaches in the world. Really, you can see your toes from standing at the top of the water's edge. It's really quite beautiful.
That's very true. And for students coming from Illinois, if you love snow, there is still an opportunity. We do have 1 or 2 ski mountains in Australia that you can go and see snow. But generally speaking, you won't see it in Australia and your day-to-day life. In Sydney, if it's below 65 degrees during winter, we'll complain it's too cold. And if it's above 90 degrees in summer, we'll complain it's too hot. So we like a very mild, temperate weather in Australia. Is there any other questions?
So one question we get a lot is that, you know, students are really excited that, you know, our degrees are only 3 years, which is about savings, getting a jump start on things. But in terms of coming back to grad school or getting a job in the United States, you know, I don't think there's any issues, you know, but what do you all think about that?
It's a really good point. So all of our universities are ranked in the top 300 globally, so they're very well recognised around the world. And one cool thing about being in the Southern Hemisphere is our dates are a little different. So we have summer around December, January, February. And so we tell US students that that's a perfect opportunity to go home and get an internship and start networking. So you're able to then do those internships when all your classmates in the US are back in college, so you don't have much competition. And that's perfect for if you're thinking about coming back to the US to start doing that and working out what kind of companies you'd like to work for. But if you actually want to stay in Australia, you are welcome to stay in work for 2 years after graduation. Anything to add to that, Tori? Did I sum it up?
I think that sums it up. I think one of the other fun facts that we often tell students is that the average starting wage out of university in Australia is around 58,000 Australian dollars. So I think that's something important to note. If you're able to secure that employment after your degree, it's quite a nice salary to start with.
Absolutely. Perfect. Well, if there's no further questions, we can end it there.
Thanks everyone for joining us.
Yes, thank you all for joining us. When you close the window, there will be a link to a very quick 4-question survey. We'd appreciate any feedback you can provide. Also, this was just one of many sessions being hosted, so be sure to sign up for additional sessions at IACAC.org. In about a week, you'll be able to find this session's recording as well as all the other session recordings at IACAC.org. Thank you so much for joining us today and have a great rest of your evening.